Just me, a place to be me, where you get to experience life. 'Cause life is a journey, not a guided tour. If you want the rainbow, you have to go through the rain. Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to Clinician Table Talk, where we partner with Journeys Counseling Center and Just Me podcast to bring you real conversations around mental wellness. My name is Sasha, and I'm here with my amazing co-host Tracey and Shirena.
Hello.
Yes, and I am excited about this week's or this month's topic in Men's Health Month. And this conversation is for men and those who care about them. So get ready for some nice information this month.
And today we're diving into the mind and body connection. Once again, the mind and body connection was stress and anxiety and what it does to the body, especially for men, and how that plays out in real life. We're going to talk about different tools and techniques that men can use to support their physical and mental well-being.
So let's start with the basics. Stress and anxiety aren't just emotional, they show up physically too. And for a lot of men, those physical symptoms are the first signs that something are wrong.
And we know that men have a difficulty in showing like emotions, and they might not say that I'm anxious, but they're dealing with back pain, and we know that's a symptom, tightness in their shoulders, stomach issues, or headaches, or they often are tired all the time and they can't, figure out why they can't shake it.
But have you noticed that whenever we ask them how they're doing, they be like, I'm good, I'm good.
Hmm.
But their body
Hmm.
is telling us like different types. Their body is telling them, like, look, something is not good, but you're not communicating that. So picture a man working 60 hours a week. I want you all to think about that and trying to provide for his family and not feeling well. And due to the fact that he's not feeling well, he's overwhelmed, not sleeping, blood pressure is high, lashing out over small things. And when you're not feeling well and you're working a lot, anxiety also shows up with the physical and the mental. And we sometimes it's not addressed.
And some helpful tips is if you notice patterns, if you're waking up with headaches or muscle tensions consistently, it might be time to evaluate your stress levels and not just your sleep. And then also another helpful tip is to track your physical symptoms, like in a notebook or an app. Connecting with emotional triggers like work or stress, arguments, or like deadlines, anything that might cause you to have those symptoms, so you actually have something that's tracking it.
And that is a good thing to do because if you track it, you can visually see what's going on and when it happens. So tracking is a good thing to do.
Right. And then once you've kind of tracked it, really understand, take that information to a doctor or even maybe discuss it with some friends if you don't feel comfortable with doctors. Um, because sometimes it is not just poor sleep quality, but it can also be physical. It can be blood pressure concerns. So it can also be maybe there is a genetic history of heart disease in your family. And so stress may impact you differently than it may impact your friend or your homeboy. So that's why we encourage scientists, doctors, the medical community really encourages people to, after they do notice some changes in their bodies, to go to the doctor and see what is really going on, because there may be some tests that can be done that can definitely rule out some of those physical health concerns. And it may be medicine that you can take for insomnia, challenges with sleeping, or maybe there's some acid reflux concerns. Um, and a lot of times, acid reflux can be unprocessed stress.
We hear what we hear what you're saying, Sasha, but within our culture, we're we're taught, and men are taught too, to push through things, be strong, never show your weakness. And it's sad, but sometimes going to the doctor, our culture see that as a weakness because we're asking for help from other people.
And I will also say, in addition to, so there's a couple of reasons why certain cultures don't go to the doctors. And another reason is the lack of trust in the medical field, and some of the learned things that we are taught from the people who helped us grow up. So if we never went to the doctors when we were younger, or if that wasn't something that was prioritized for the people who took care of us, then it's going to be hard to just automatically put that behavior into practice. And so for that, what we would say is, what is your, take a second to think about what you want for your future, how you want to live in your 50s, how you want to live in your 60s. Shoot, how you want to live if you're 20, how you want to live and how you want to feel in your 30s. And think about really what you need to do right now in order to get to a point where you can actually fulfill that lived experience in those years. And that might be taking care of yourself in a different way than you're currently doing now. And so we don't know how to take care of ourselves until or unless we listen to our bodies, because our bodies are always changing. Um, and so, yes, that going to the doctors, anything of that nature may not be something that we were taught or that it's second nature to us. Um, but if you are experiencing back pain, if you are experiencing challenges sleeping, if you are experiencing an extreme amount of stress, my question would then be, why continue to live in that experience if it's stressing you out? Why continue to live in that anger? Why continue to live in that avoidance? Why continue to live in that experience if it, you know, in your heart and in your mind that it's not serving you at that point in time? Now, if it's serving you, that's fine. Absolutely. But from a mental health perspective, that's that crossroad of, okay, if this is no longer serving you, what do we need to do to change it? And one of the things that this podcast right now is kind of encouraging people to do, especially men, is to really take a step back and say and realize that, hey, maybe some change needs to happen if right now I am not experiencing the life and the feelings and the symptoms that I truly want to experience. And one of those recommendations would be really track your symptoms, like Shirena and Tracey said. If you notice that you're starting to have a lot of chronic back pain, a lot of headaches, your heart is starting to beat at inopportune times, like really random times, then maybe you should begin to see and notice when those things are happening, because there might be some other physical health conditions that are going on, and you don't want to wait until it's too late.
Yeah, I think too, like, and listen to both you with Sharina said it's sad, and you said, like, we have to pay attention because we know that ignoring stress, it doesn't make it go away. It just has a different way of finding its way of speaking out, and you mentioned like how your body keeps the score. So really take the time to ask yourself questions like, where do I feel stress at? And I know even when talking with men, normally, you see the tightness in the shoulders and the chest, even in conversation. That and if that's where it is, just be aware and try to work on those things early. When you go to the doctor, have those conversations, be your own advocate, and really telling them like, these things are going on in my life. This is how my body is feeling, so you can get the appropriate care.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so just recognizing and tracking how you're feeling is one thing that you can do to help yourself, and really take your own health back into your control. But another thing is, I know this sounds so cliche, but mindfulness. And mindfulness doesn't have to be complicated. Mindfulness is really just about creating the space for yourself to breathe, reflect, and reset.
And so what we can do now is we can practice one of those techniques which is called box breathing. And we can do that briefly now. I want you to inhale and count to 4 as you're inhaling subconsciously in your mind. And I want you to hold it and count to 4 while you're holding it. And I want you to exhale and count to 4 while you're exhaling. And if you do this, breathe in, hold, and exhale. You can do this anywhere. And what you're doing is you're trying to regulate your breathing and bring yourself to the present. And that's something that we do not do a lot, is being in the present. And in order to be in the present, you have to be mindful of what you're doing and where you are.
Yes, I like on the box breathing. You also can do something as simple as like body scans, and again, asking yourself where I hold that tension at, and an exercise to know like with tension, you can clench your fist really tight to feel that tension there, and then relax it. And now you know the difference. So when I'm feeling it, and I know that's an area. And again, like men, a lot of times it's up in the shoulders areas, and you can do the same thing in the shoulders area just to see what it feels like, holding it real tight and then relaxing. And then when I know when I'm feeling that tightness up in that area, that's one of my as I do that body scan. Again, early intervention helps.
And even going for walks can be something that you can do mindfully just to show awareness of how your body feels when it is at rest, or even when you're going to the gym, or when you're even lifting weights. You can be aware of what your body feels like when it's actually experiencing tension. So all of these are examples, are ways that you can begin to really differentiate and bring awareness to what does my body feel like when I'm in tension versus what does my body feel like when it's relaxed. Because a lot of times, when I have clients come into the office and I'll talk to them, just about things that are going on, I'll ask people well, how are you feeling? And they might say stress. And I say, well, where are you holding that stress? And they look at me with a questionable look on their face, because they haven't really thought ever about what my body feels like, what their body feels like when they're stressed. They know they are stressed, but they don't know the difference between when they're stressed or when they're relaxed. So sometimes even practicing being aware of what the changes in your body are definitely are helpful. So with the phone, we all have a telephone, we all have an alarm app on our phone. Just set your alarm and label it breathe. So 3 different times throughout the day, set a reminder in your phone. And then when it goes off, you can look at your phone and say, oh, that's right. I'm going to practice that breathing that Shirena said for maybe a minute. And you can start and end your day with either a minute or 5 minutes with just breathing. No pressure, no phone, just breathing. And what's another helpful hint?
There's some one other things to like think about when it comes to men's health, mental health, is that it changes, over time. Because the same challenges you have at 25 are definitely different at 55.
Mm, definitely. At 30, it's proving yourself. At 60, it's redefining yourself. But if men don't develop those healthy coping skills early, then those years later, you can feel that emotional landmines just popping up. What we need to do in our 20s are going to look different than what we want to do and need to do in our 30s to help us stay present, stay calm. We might have different responsibilities in our 30s. What we want to do and need to do in our 50s is going to look different than we want to do and need to do in our 60s. I see that frequently when I sit back and look at my dad as he's aging, and the same things he still works out, in the mornings, but it may not be every morning. It may be maybe 2 times a week because his body is just telling him that he needs to do things differently. And I can respect that because he's actually listening to his body.
Mhm.
So, as you talk about different ages, we have to normalize emotional health for every age.
Hmm.
We have to normalize emotional health at every age. It is never too late for healing. All the things that we discussed today are things that men can do right now. And you can also talk to other men as it relates to how we can work together regarding breaking these cycles of silent suffering. And we can use the interventions that is discussed or that was discussed today as it relates to getting help.
So another thing that is definitely helpful, um, because sometimes we don't know where to start, is take a second and ask some of the older men within your generation or within your family how they felt in their 20s versus how they felt in their 30s versus how they felt in their 40s. Because sometimes when we have those conversations, we can begin to see some of the patterns within our bloodlines. Health disease is very prominent within on my paternal side of my family. But if I don't have a conversation with my dad to understand, oh, well, how are you feeling when you were in your 30s? Me being in my 30s, I may ignore some signs that he was like, no, that was a red flag for me, Sasha. Yeah, I had definitely was dealing with high blood pressure then. So maybe you need to not ignore that and maybe you need to maybe focus on and ask the doctor a little bit because I know high blood pressure and heart disease runs in his side of the family. So definitely to the men listening, we see you, your body is talking to you, and you have to listen if you want to sustain the life that you are living.
And we started out with some very easy steps today. Breathe, reflect, and reach out for support.
So thank you for tuning in today. Like, share, and subscribe.
Until next time, take care of yourself, guys, so that we can all take care of each other.
Thank you so much for listening to Just Me Therapy podcast. If you are seeking further one-on-one diagnoses, interventions, and treatment plans, please consider scheduling an appointment with an individual counselor at Journeys Counseling Center, located in Greensboro, North Carolina. Journeys can be reached at 336-294-1349. The mission of Just Me Therapy podcast is to use authentic conversations to uplift one's mind, body, and soul. The goal of Just Me Therapy is to offer affordable education and insight to individuals who experience financial barriers to accessing individualized behavioral health care services. With that being said, the information, including opinions, advice, and recommendations discussed in this podcast, are intended for individual, informational, and educational purposes only. Such information is not intended to substitute the recommendations of your own licensed therapist or healthcare professional. Although we are licensed behavioral health professionals, we are not your licensed behavioral health professional. As a result, the advice mentioned on this podcast should not replace the recommendations offered by your own qualified health professional.